And yeah, they were not very nice to me, but they forced me to eat more food. And lo and behold, I started throwing up everywhere. And I felt very bad. Welcome, my beautiful crew members, newcomers, but most importantly, my beloved OGs. I'm your host, Lucy, aka Lucifer, and I'm a former obese girl turned bodybuilder. This time, I want to talk a bit how my issues with food started, a force feeding incident, and what may have caused my maladaptive coping using chocolate.
Chocolate! Chocolate!
But before we get into it, hit the subscribe button to join our amazing crew. We always appreciate more members. It's still a long way to go, but once we hit 5,000 subscribers, I do want to do a little 80s style home workout video for you guys. Spandex and everything. Really, I just want an excuse to do that, so please subscribe. Now, without any further ado, let's talk a bit about my messed up lore. For the longest portion of my life, I have struggled with food. For some periods longer and for some periods less. But food addiction was in some way a constant companion until not all that long ago. As a child, I was rather athletic and fit, always aspiring to be the strongest or fastest at whatever we were doing in PE class. And usually, I actually would be. Granted, that was long before puberty kicked in. I started various martial arts, ballet and figure skating. However, I never stuck with anything long term, even though I very much enjoyed these sports. That's because I had an exceptional lack of discipline and fear of commitment. I couldn't have stuck to anything if you put a gun to my head. And yet I managed to have quite the ego on me. I wanted to be the best at anything and everything. And whenever I was, you would be sure to hear about it. Well, I guess I haven't changed all that much. I've been thinking about how and when my issues with food emerged. The earliest incidents surrounding food that I can remember happened in kindergarten. They were serving us milk rice. I was eating some, but then eventually I was full. I told the caretakers that worked there, but they got angry with me. They told me to continue eating. Mind you, this was in the 90s. This was still very much a time of don't you know there are children starving in Africa? Like, you have to clean your plate. So that was very much a mentality. So I continued eating and I eventually stopped and I told them, I am so full, I will throw up if you force me to eat more. And they were still angry with me. They said, you took this food, you have to eat it. And yeah, they were not very nice to me, but they forced me to eat more food. And lo and behold, I started throwing up everywhere. And I felt very bad. Even though making children finish their plate at the time was kind of like something that wasn't exactly frowned upon. To this day though, that still pisses me off. I mean, who the heck does that? Force feeding a 5-year-old or 4-year-old or however old I was in that moment. Because also the way they were going about it, they were pretty mean for some reason. While that was not a pleasant experience around food, I don't think that particular incident was so traumatizing that it actually had any effect on me, or that was actually a root cause of my later issues with food. But what do I know? Maybe a psychologist would tell me differently. Because I don't know when it happened, but somewhere while growing into an adult, something got properly messed up with my ghrelin and leptin production. Because now I just don't get full, or rarely ever. For those who don't know, ghrelin and leptin are the hormones that control your body's hunger and fullness cues. So if there's something messed up, then you could be extremely hungry, or on the opposite end, you would eat just a little bit and already be full, which is obviously also something that can cause you to struggle with food in both directions. I can count on one hand the amount of times that I felt full in the past 6 years. But again, I don't think that has necessarily anything to do with that milk rice incident, but who knows. One time, while I was still living with my ex, I stood in the kitchen. We had just eaten, and I started crying. And he looked at me like, "What the heck is wrong with you? Why are you crying?" And I said, I feel full." Because I had forgotten, at that point it had been years since the last time I felt full, and I had forgotten that it feels warm, like that there's a temperature change in your stomach and it feels kind of warm and cozy. And in that moment I got a bit emotional, and also it just felt so unfair because I realized there are people that get to feel like that every single day, and for me it's just so exceptionally rare that I get to have that fullness feeling. As you can imagine, this is part of the reason why people, or at least me, will binge eat until it literally hurts, until it's painful, because your stomach is physically literally full. And it actually feels a little bit dangerous because you're moving all carefully, because it kind of feels as if you could rupture your stomach or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's just because that way you actually feel something, because you're never full, which is not a great way to deal with that, to be honest. I would not recommend doing that ever, because even then it's not necessarily satisfying at all, because then you are just kind of in pain, and the only fullness feeling you have is your stomach being physically full, but then obviously you'll still be hungry, like you still want to eat, and then you get pissed off because you literally cannot eat anymore, or you realize you really shouldn't. So it's just, there's no winning. And the other reason of it is, or other part of the reason is, it's also really more like a compulsive behavior. It's like you just need to do that for the sake of eating. But as my life has been progressing, I got a handle on food, and now I am a bodybuilder. It turns out that never being full and being able to eat large quantities of food without batting an eye was actually a blessing in disguise. I try to think of it like a superpower that before I just never knew how to harness, and it was kind of destroying myself. But now it is a tool I can wield, if you will. But onwards with the law. As many, I wasn't born into the most wholesome or stable circumstances. I have faced quite a bit of adversity in my life, but that alone could hardly be the root cause of my binge eating, food addiction, and subsequent obesity, or could it? I've been asking myself this because whenever you're watching a show like My 600-Pound Life, one can't help but notice that all of these people have some significant trauma incident that caused them to reach for food to cope. So I was thinking, when exactly my food habits fell off the deep end, something must have happened. And then it hit me. I've always dealt with pretty bad bullying, parental abuse, and poverty. But what pushed me over the edge was this one guy who started stalking me when I was about 11 or 12 years old. This kind of blew my own mind, because for the past 15 plus years, I had absolutely no memory of this. I could, in the sense that I completely forgot about it. Like, not a single thought ever went there. Like, I had absolutely forgotten about this until I tried to remember really hard around that time that I started to eat in a certain way. Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, how could I have forgotten this? Something that was so stressful. I used to play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh back then. Your girl even competed in the very first ever Pharaoh tour. Yes, I am that old indeed. In my home city, there were quite a few stores you can play at that I would frequent. And at one of those stores, I met a guy I played with. He was very nice, very friendly, so we became friends and eventually even started hanging out outside of just playing Yu-Gi-Oh at those stores. The guy seemed nice and cool enough, but eventually he got a bit too friendly, a bit too affectionate. he wanted to be girlfriend and boyfriend, and he became rather pushy about it. Like, he wouldn't leave me alone. He never did anything to me, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He'd seemingly follow me wherever I went, and he even turned up at my home a good few times. The worst thing was the calls, though. The sound of a phone ringing had never been so loud and so oppressive. Like, every time the phone rang, I would get a little heart attack, and like my heart would start racing. It was just, it's a feeling that's hard to describe. I still don't even know how to put it into words, but I was scared of the phone ringing, if that makes sense. This was before everyone had smartphones, so he called the house phone a lot as well. And I started unplugging it whenever I could, but my mom was not very impressed with that, so that wasn't really an option most of the time. By the way, this guy was somewhere between 18 and 20 years old, I think, and I was either 11 or I had just turned 12, so the whole thing was like exceptionally creepy. I started to withdraw. I would just stay at home and play video games as much as I could. And I started skipping school more than normal. I was already skipping school a lot because the bullying was kind of getting out of hand. And at that time, they hadn't yet started to station a police car at the school, which they did just as I think in my last year of school there, they put a police car there because the school was already known for, let's say, violent incidents, and it was just a bit of a very dodgy part of town. So it makes sense that they would then station a police car there because, again, this was like not essentially a very safe place. Let's put it like that. Like the school itself, it was like the students there could be quite violent. Yeah, it wasn't very nice. But yeah, I would just sit at home, eat, and play video games. The only reason I didn't eat myself into super morbid obesity was because I was a young teenager and I didn't have access to unlimited food or money. But nonetheless, I still managed to eat myself into obesity. My mom didn't exactly help because she herself had an issue with food. We had a Nutella drawer in our flat. That should tell you everything you need to know about that. I would sit on the floor in front of the TV and play Nintendo 64 or PlayStation while eating an entire Nutella glass as a snack. I'm not gonna lie, that was actually a lot of fun. Aside from the terror of being stalked, just playing video games and eating ungodly amounts of chocolate spread was, yeah, I mean, it was fun. This stalking situation luckily didn't last forever, but the habits I built during that time stuck. A stressed out teenager in a broken home is no match for the addictive chemicals concocted by well-paid food scientists. So turns out if you're a very athletic teenager and you stop working out as much and eat about 3 times as much as you were before, you can gain a decent amount of weight in just a few years. My mom always told me that women can do anything just as well as men can do it. My mom is a self-proclaimed hippie and feminist. That's all I'm gonna say about trying to describe that. But oftentimes I think it's a great thing that she outright rejected the internet because, good lord, she would fit in very well with a certain section of the TikTok crowd. For the most part, I could still somewhat keep up physically despite my increased weight, but once puberty hit, I was utterly unable to keep up with the boys in school. I didn't know about testosterone levels or the physiological differences between men and women. From what my mom had told me, women can be just as strong as men and do anything they can. So I thought maybe I'm just inherently weak. To go from one of the most athletic kids in the class to, well, not that. At that point, I was still oblivious to my weight gain. That might sound crazy, but you might be surprised how easy it is to not notice weight gain. even if it's significant. One day, our school was part of some study. They had everyone gathered in this PE hall sports thing, and they did a whole bunch of fitness tests on us. This included measuring a height and weight. That was the day I found out that I was obese in front of the whole school. I really felt like crying. I felt so defeated and weak, but I kept it together until I got home. That week, I wanted to climb on the roof and watch the stars. Back in the day, free running, parkour, and climbing up stuff was really popular, so me and some other kids sometimes did that around the city after school. And I realized I hadn't done anything like that in a long time. So what I would usually do, and what I had done countless times before, is sneak out onto the balcony at night and then muscle up myself onto the roof. And that day, I couldn't do it. I was too weak or too heavy, depending on how you look at it. That kind of broke me. I had always been strong and physically capable. And I guess in that moment, I realized that for a long time, I hadn't been. And I just couldn't see that. And I always defined a lot of my self-worth, I guess, over my physical ability, if that makes sense. From there, I just gave up. I leaned more into eating and playing video games, since in my mind, the battle was already lost. I was already too weak and too fat to fix. Down the line, I would try to change, but I was too hungry, too uninformed about how nutrition works, too addicted, and too undisciplined. But that's a storyline I might leave for another video. So, that's how my food issue started, and that's how I got obese. Looking at my experience, I think food addiction or binge eating could really be triggered by anything, by any strong enough challenge. Food in my story, and in many other food issue stories that I have ever heard, food was just something that was there, that the person in question was then able to use as a coping mechanism. This is something that could happen to anyone. So when you see a fat person, don't judge them. Their physical appearance might be a symptom of a struggle you know nothing about. And being a dick probably won't help them. But how about you guys? Have any of you ever had issues with food? Do you know someone who has struggled with binge eating or food addiction? Have you ever eaten an entire glass of Nutella while gaming? Tell me all about it in the comments below. For now, I am going to end this rambling session. It was a delight to have you here. Thanks for turning up. But before you leave, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. That way, you won't miss the next video, and our crew is one amazing member stronger. I'm gonna love you and leave you, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye! For some periods more, for some periods less. And usually I would be. Granted, that was before puberty kicked in. My cats are taking the other room apart for some reason. For the largest portion of my life, I have That's because I had a severe lack of discipline. If you can eat whatever your calls tell from what my mom had told, that way you won't